First of all, for your invitation. I'm very happy and stimulated to be here, and thank you for the introduction. My presentation today will question the workshop theme through the case of Tokyo and its imagined futures drawn by Japanese architects. And I added a kind of subtitle, Edo as a retro future, question mark, to give you a clue of my point. The main reason of the choice, my choice of this topic is like other capital cities, Tokyo is often assimilated to the national territory and often used as a showcase for the country itself as well as for the outside world. Since the beginning of the 21st century, the Japanese national government and the Tokyo metropolitan government have multiplied and amplified policies and incentive measures of all kinds with a specific target to make the largest Japanese city an exemplary metropolis, an urban model on an international scale. And moreover, this urban model must be or have to be a sustainable urban model on this international scale. Very briefly, in Japan, in terms of sustainable development policy, according to Junichiro Okata and Akito Murayama, who are two Tokyo University urban planning researchers, the approach of sustainability in Japan has substantially changed after the Fukushima disaster. I quote them, "Until 2011, the issues of sustainability were not explicitly addressed from the point of view of urban form or forms, but primarily from the angle of natural risks and mainly through technological improvements and the promotion of eco-responsible lifestyles." But I have to add now, because they are visible, urban forms are really included in the construction of this representational showcase that is the target for Tokyo. Very lately, in 2021, the Tokyo Metropolitan Government published the ESG project. E for environment, S for social, and G for governance, among other keywords for Tokyo Bay Area. The main purpose is to develop the, I quote, the laboratory of a model city of the 21st century in Japan, in support of a globalized technophile ecological narrative. And this is one of the pages of the brochure, official brochure of the ESG project. I framed the phrase in red because, surprisingly, Edo, the former capital, is used as a reference for some of its virtuous characteristics, like circular economy, reuse practices, symbiosis with nature, etc., etc., thus creating a sort of hybrid urban fiction. The aim of my presentation is not to assess or estimate the potential or weakness of Tokyo to become a model city for the world of tomorrow, nor its urban policies efficiency. The purpose here is to examine retrospectively the production of architects, and especially Japanese architects, independent architects, who at specific moments in the recent history of this metropolis, from the late 50s to the 2010s, have sought to remodel Tokyo in order to define an identifiable urban model themselves. Indeed, we will see it is not a new question, this question of becoming an exemplary urban model for Tokyo. And the agenda of consisting of mixing Edo heritage and new technology is not neither a new question. More precisely, I would like to look back at the discourses figures, narratives, or imaginaries Japanese architects rely on to design the future of the Japanese capital through the large-scale drawings they produce, or they have produced. So the corpus I have chosen is that of project without sponsors. This is very important. Those architects are not commissioned by any authority. That is to say, they are completely, they free themselves completely from rules, norms, of policies. And this criterion to choose the projects brings me to specify a distinction between fiction and scenarios. It's kind of theoretical background of my presentation. I would like to quote a French philosopher and historian, Jean-Marc Besse, who is a specialist of cartographic representation and visual studies within the framework of the disciplines of the project in urban planning and landscape. For him, the question of representation can be examined from a narrative perspective. He wrote in 2020, the representation of possibilities consisting of developing a story, a narration of a plausible future, could be a fiction that would be more open to possibilities, while the scenario would be a quest to master the future of this reality by controlling and manipulating the different parameters that compose it. Furthermore, in urban planning, because it involves the manipulation of different parameters and hypotheses, the scenario process would be less conducive to the development and dissemination of a stabilized image. Not univocal, unlike those produced in support of a fiction, the figurative representations resulting from the scenario process, in fact, integrate uncertainty as a foundation and are consequently moving and plural or unstable. So my main question in this presentation is, when we analyze the corpus of projects of plausible or possible futures for Tokyo produced by Japanese architects, it necessarily involves questioning the conceptual relationship they have, those architects, with both the present and the past of Tokyo. Indeed, to project a future or to draw a future for a city brings to the question on which present and on which past should we rely. And in the case of Tokyo, this question is very intriguing because, you know, recent history of Tokyo is really punctuated by numerous cycles of construction, destruction, and reconstruction. So conversely, what do the representation of its futures that architects seek to project to the outside world tell us also about the image of present Tokyo and or past Tokyo? There are numerous projects designed by Japanese architects for the future of Tokyo, and we almost can say that there is a tradition that exists for such an agenda, especially from the reconstruction period after World War II. And that tradition consists mainly of drawing large-scale fictional projects. But why? Several reasons, of course. Immediately, the most obvious reason is for those architects seek to career strategy or a wish for international recognition. I mean, to attract the authorities' eyes in order to get commissioned. And most of these large-scale projects for Tokyo, designed by Japanese architects without sponsor, are simultaneously published in Japanese architecture magazines, translated in English. So it's really a way to diffuse the idea and to get an international recognition. A second reason can be from those architects a feeling of frustration. I mean, the post-World War II reconstruction, which was considered as complete by the authorities in the late 50s, is unsatisfactory for many architects, Japanese architects. For them, it's a lost opportunity to project an urban future specific to Japan. And I will quote an important architectural critic, Kawazoe Noboru, that Volker introduced already yesterday morning. Kawazoe was one of the most active spokesperson for those architects. And very much later, in 2001, he made the following analysis. I quote him: "Nevertheless, at that time, I mean the post-World War II reconstruction time, I could hardly see any hope for the future. After the end of the war, the architects' dreams of rebuilding the cities up from the ruin and moor all fell apart." A third reason for those projects is, of course, and I also make a connection with Volker's presentation yesterday, a criticism towards Japanese official planning system. Because the official urban planning, Japanese urban planning system was at that time mainly based on applying imported Western urban models. One of the critical projects, and the most famous one, is the one by Tange Kenzo in 1960. To introduce this project very briefly, in a few words, Tange was completely against the Japanese government new towns policy at that time, the late 50s. That policy aim was to absorb population growth and to reduce urban sprawl. So on the contrary, his proposal for Tokyo is a dynamic or growing and flexible open system, an axis across the Tokyo Bay, which is composed of modules that can be added as much as needed. So we will see in a few other projects that the majority of Japanese architects' projects designed at that time and until the 70s and 80s don't really seek to remodel the existing Tokyo, but they propose a new urban model which is added to the already urbanized territory. In other words, those architects need a kind of virgin land to imagine the future of Tokyo, which means for them it is fundamental to create a new image for Tokyo from scratch. So the last reason, and in fact this is my hypothesis of the reason why there are so many large-scale projects for the future of Tokyo at that time, is that there is a kind of synchrony between the image and the future of Tokyo in this quest by architects. Such a hypothesis assumes that Tokyo does not have an a priori image or does not reflect any clear or obvious image outside Japan. I mean, an archetypal image as it is well known and accepted for Paris, Barcelona, or New York, for example. All those metropolises are deeply marked by structuring and lasting urban planning and were exempt from massive destruction in the 20th century. Indeed, in 1991, a period following another cycle of significant and rapid urban transformation in Tokyo, the bubble, the critical words of the architect Yutaka Hiko Saka in a Tribune in an architecture magazine, Japanese architecture magazine, perfectly summed up the situation. I quote him. He said, "Tokyo was established by clearing away the old city, and so it developed without any internal reference standards or sublimated structure. As a result, all urban space become sprawl space and under construction space. Thus, for this architect, there would be an equivalence between the image and the future of Tokyo. The image of Tokyo is defined or occurs only in a vision of its future. In other words, it is on the occasion of a project of the future of Tokyo that its image is fabricated in extenso. There would be a synchrony between the image and the future of Tokyo insofar as it is the project of the future of Tokyo that creates an image of this city that doesn't possess one a priori. So for nearly 3 decades, the figure of the island dominated the imaginations of Japanese architects who explored a possible future for Tokyo. Another figure emerged, the figure of the high-rise tower. And the combination of these two figures, the island and the tower, or the limited vertical city, inevitably refers to the urban model of Manhattan, the paragon of Western capitalist modernity. So I show you very briefly other projects. There are a lot. It's just a selection. Tange again, Kurokawa Kisho with the figure of the island again and the towers. But of course we can find counter examples. In this proposal by the architect Ojima Toshio, the figure of the island is assumed as a replica of the Manhattan model, but it is adapted to the local urban historical context. His project, called Shitamachi Manhattan Project, for the district of Koto in the north of Tokyo Bay, is presented as a hybrid urban form that mixes built-up typology of the New York skyscraper and the typology inherited from Edo. So the pre-modern horizontal type of buildings is aligned on either side of the canals that are refilled with water, while the residential towers are connected to each other by a network of pedestrian walkways that ensures minimal traffic in the event of a major flood. So the name of the project itself is an association of two landscapes or two urban models, Shitamachi, Tokyo lower city on the one side, and Manhattan on the other side. Those two models which are a priori incompatible or contradictory. However, referring to the pictorial representation of Edo, Ojima, objective is definitely the quest for an image for Tokyo in the 21st century, particularly in the context of internationalization that was underway at that time, the 80s. I quote him in 1999 about this project. It is now recognized as a historical fact that Edo in the 18th century was the world of ukiyo-e and a beautiful city that could be world class. In contrast, Tokyo in the 20th century was a city that had the vitality of a new civilization, but it had become a city with too little cultural flavor to be called a world city. So with the mobilization of these two historical models, Edo and Manhattan, at the same time, combining pre-modern and modern local urban cultural figures, we are witnessing the emergence of intentions very different from the sole invention of a futuristic future for Tokyo. And I will, because I don't have many time left, I will show you briefly two projects that appeared in the early 21st century, one by Ohno Hidetoshi, who is also working on a large scale about the future of Tokyo, but trying to recognize the specific urban motif of Edo and also Tokyo to elaborate his project. And another one by Yamamoto Riken, who got the Pritzker Prize recently. And what connects those both architects and projects and radically distinguishes them from the previous generation is the conception of the large scale according to an approach that is the opposite of that of their elders. It consists of thinking of the metropolis from the smallest constituent or structuring elements of Tokyo or Edo. For Yamamoto Riken, it's the housing cell, and for Hidetoshi Ohno, this is the microvoids, linear open spaces that were really structuring Edo and inherited in Tokyo and still exist. So their work pursue the idea of a future for Tokyo based on intrinsic cultural resources, or what the architecture historian and critic Rainer Banham called the city's ecology, and in this case, Tokyo's ecology, which would make Tokyo's image finally visible. So, and to conclude very quickly, I would like to say that for some architects born after the war, Tokyo's urban ecology, in the sense I just mentioned before, in particular allows in particular to construct a new narrative, exploring its spatial resources hidden or marginalized by modernity, determines as many potential to write the future of the Japanese capital, and offers the opportunity to reconstruct or to construct a locally familiar image, singular but shareable beyond borders. The scenario of a cohabitation of global figures, the vertical city, and local figures, the urban village, draws a new path for the implementation of a future, this time real, of Tokyo, and the creation of the original and exemplary urban model so desired by the authorities as well as by the architects. Thank you very much.